Kevin made a Berserker T-shirt with his face, and he claimed, you didn't really have the right to do that, and he got into like a weird legal thing with Kevin, and this is long after Kevin was very established with the shops, the secret stash and having merchandise. So Kevin paid him an undisclosed figure to be able to continue just making those shirts. But of course, that ended whatever goodwill or decent relationship there might have been between those guys. So that's something that's not real common knowledge, but that is knowledge within, the deeper ranks. It's not something that we can talk about. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it caused some weird legal financial stuff between Kevin and this guy. And, you'll probably never hear much about him or him involved in any kind of Kevin stuff at all since that time. But they got into a weird battle over the shirt.
Wow, I actually didn't know that story.
You could just see the tumbleweeds blowing through his IMDb page.
And in his defense, for that, I don't think the guy ever had any aspirations to be an actor. But, he did create some financial, weird legal issues for Kevin. But they did iron out their differences. And, it's the shirts continue, and this guy went on. So, and I don't know what they agreed upon, but they did, and that was that. So,
well, still, I never heard that story before, so that's pretty interesting. That is really interesting. I'm really glad
I was able to share something with you that is a true story and a little bit, not necessarily all that common knowledge, and I don't feel badly like I shared something terrible, from within the realms of the View Askew universe. There's good and bad in all of filmdom.
This is true. Yeah. This is very true. So, we're back on the scene. Tell us about working with Kevin, because he had to be such a hell of a guy back in the 90s with this movie.
Well, it was a very exciting time for me in my personal life as well. And independent film was really, in its, at least that phase of independent film, because people like John Cassavetes and whatnot have been making independent film outside of the studio system, for many years. But the resurgence and the new sort of independent film movement of the late 80s, early 90s, it was becoming a thing again, and it was exciting. And back then, there weren't that many people in New Jersey shooting films. There weren't that many filmmakers because, you're talking pre-digital. It was all film cameras, and it took a real lot to actually shoot film. So if you really wanted to be involved, you had to be in New York or out in California or maybe in some of the bigger cities like Chicago. So when I saw somebody was having an audition to shoot film in New Jersey, it didn't matter to me, hour and a half, 2 hours away. I had to be there because it wasn't that common. And Kevin was a very dynamic, interesting, funny guy. I mean, I knew immediately what struck me about him was he had a really great command for language, and he had a great vocabulary. We hit it off. We had the whole excitement for independent film thing going. So it was just great. I mean, he really was just a super driven, fun guy. I didn't get to spend all that many days on the set. And then I got to be part of Vulgar a handful of years later. He wasn't really around on the set much for that either. But, I can't speak enough about how, it really was. You hear it all the time. Oh, it's wonderful working with this one and that. He's just a great guy. He really is.
Let's say, what about Mosier? What about Mosier? Because we have Mosier in the end of this scene.
Oh, Mosier's hilarious. Well, what I thought about Mosier after I got to know him and then watch him in the subsequent films was just what a very fine actor he really would have been or could have been had he really pursued it. Because he's dynamite whenever he shows up in any of the roles in those early films. I mean, he's not only funny, but he's really interesting to watch for a guy who wasn't necessarily looking to be an actor per se. That always blew me away about him. But in the early days, the first year of them putting the film together and then getting all the interest from Miramax, I had a very nice sort of what you would call a production friendship brewing with those guys. Even though I was 2 hours away from them, we would talk on the phone, and they were all excited when they got Miramax. Then all of a sudden they got a giant box of CDs from really well-known signed bands to choose from for the soundtrack. And it was just really exciting and really fun to be a part of all that back then. And then it's kind of like almost no looking back, because the film has taken on such an amazing life of its own over, 2+ decades.
It's crazy when you think about it, because we're talking about this movie now, 23 years later. It's really crazy when you think about it from that perspective. Did you happen to see, when did you see the movie first? Did you see it at that screening that was talked about in the documentary, or how did you first see the film on a screen?
Well, the first time I saw the film was on a TV screen, because Kevin had sent us all his director's first cut on VHS, which cool. I still have, which is a prized possession of mine, and it still works, although I haven't played it in a VCR in many years. But it had the View Askew Productions logo clown on the VHS box and on the tape. And it was, the uncut where Dante dies at the end. And it was before the really great soundtrack. So it was really crude and rough. But, and the gum guy scenes ran a little longer and weren't as broken up, because when they finally got to Miramax and they started tightening some things up, they cut it a little more. They removed a few things. They inserted Jay and Bob outside in the middle of the gum guy rants, which if you see on the DVD Blu-ray or the DVD 3-box set, or the Blu-ray, they do include that original uncut that was what was the VHS that was sent to all of us in the cast.
Yeah, I believe it's on the Clerks 10 DVD set, am I correct?
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
I believe it's on the Clerks 10 DVD set, if I'm right.
Oh, right, absolutely. It's on that. And then, of course, subsequently, when they did, I don't know if it was 15 years, the DVD was now like Blu-ray, when they threw it all on Blu-ray and they upscaled it, which, by the way, it really did change, enhance the actual look of the film and the audio when they did go to that Blu-ray. That wasn't just like a cash grab to go Blu-ray.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can attest to that. I worked at a H.H. Gregg, and I brought that disc in as a way of testing open box TVs to see how good see if Blu-ray players work or the TV would work. And yeah, it actually does look incredible.
It does. It looks really great. But it looks great still in that rugged punk rock raw kind of way, but just really rich. The blacks are richer, and the quality of the picture has more of a richness to it. But one of the beauties of that film, and one of the beautiful things I felt, and I think a lot of people agree, is the rugged, almost punk rock element to that movie actually works in its favor,
Yeah, sort of like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where all those beat-up VHS copies of the film kind of give that movie the documentary feel.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point, actually. I can agree with you on that sentiment. Because we actually have it paused right here, and the grainy look does make it more old school. Even though it is the 90s, it's still very old school, which is not a bad thing. It makes it more classic, really. It's more of a classic film that way.
Kind of looks like
it does, and really that wasn't intentional in that way as much as it was a financial thing and a lighting thing. Black and white was less expensive, and it was easier to light. So, it wasn't like aesthetically he chose black and white. It was financial, but as luck would have it, as everything with Clerks very luckily, Lady Luck was on its side. All of those things played into the overall aesthetic appeal of the film.
One more question I have about your scenes. We've had Marilyn on the show. By the time people hear this episode, we'll have Marilyn on the show. What was it like for you to get sprayed by a fire extinguisher from Marilyn?
I love Marilyn. She's really a sweetheart. And on the set, I had maybe for a few days like a little baby crush on her, I'll be honest with you guys. But, I got to let you down and in on some of the movie magic. The crowd never really gets shot with an actual extinguisher. those were cutaways, and we're getting hit with like tons of talcum powder.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Because, you know, you can't really shoot real fire extinguishers at people. It's super unhealthy to breathe that shit in. And it would have really been much harder for them to shoot and film and maintain.
Oh,
so
true.
it was a little bit of trickery.
That's fine.
You know,
That's fine.
Yeah. I don't know if she probably tells the story too. I mean, she doesn't go along and say, yeah, it was a real fire extinguisher and I blasted those guys. But it was like some movie faking magic. But she's awesome. I love her. And it's always a treat whenever I get to see her at a convention or we stay in touch. And, you know, I can't speak enough about a lot of the folks from the first film. We did develop a nice sort of little celluloid family all these years later, even though we mostly communicate through, you know, social networking because we all live in different places.
You know what? Social networking sometimes is the best way. I'm a Jersey boy that lives in Milwaukee. Oh, by the way, I should bring this up.
I saw that.
We are alumni of the same high school.
I know. I remember you telling me that when you reached out to me, and I thought that was pretty goddamn cool and something I don't think I've run into anybody from my hometown and my hometown high school that is part of, say, podcast world or you know, from the view, connected to the Viewers universe or to the film world in a pop culture way, the way you guys are, which are very cool. I mean, I obviously have friends and folks from my hometown who we connect, and it's nice. A lot of them are pretty supportive of the film and all of that. But it's the first time out of the clear blue, somebody said, oh, by the way, you know, I graduated Garfield High, and I was shocked by that. It was great.
Yeah, it was really, it threw me for a loop too when you added me back before we started talking. I'm like, Garfield High School? It just doesn't come up often. It was a really cool moment for me. It was actually nice because it's a small town, and you just
right. How long have you known that I was from Garfield High?
Literally from when I added you on Facebook. Literally.
Oh, so it's not like something you knew from the past. Just
no clue.
Yeah, that's pretty great. Yeah.
It was a nice surprise. It was a very, very nice surprise.
I must have been like, oh my God, he went to my high school.
Yeah, it threw me for a loop because I had messaged Sal, who's my co-host, who's also a GHS graduate, and I messaged him. I'm like, did you know this? He's like, no, I had no clue. No idea. So that's pretty cool. So
it is. My God, I think I graduated. I don't know if you guys were you born?
Well, what class are you?
I was the class of 81, man.
1 year before I was born. I'm class 2000.
Dang!
I'm class 2000.
And
so
you're about 6 years before I was born.
Yeah, well, you're from here, but yeah, I'm 82. I'm born 82. So
that's crazy.
So that's pretty crazy, actually, yeah. So, all right, well, I got one more question for you. It's unrelated to this movie. Tell me about shooting Clerks. Because I saw this, and I don't know much about this movie except for what I've seen in details. Tell me about shooting Clerks.
Well, it's what you call a biopic, where it's a story with actors playing the parts of. It's based on Kevin's life from the time he was in high school till the time he basically finishes Clerks and it gets released to Sundance and it gets picked up by Miramax. They take that chunk of time and they made a script and they stick very, very close to the facts, and they had many of the folks from the original movie involved, and they also had Kevin's blessings, and Kevin was a part of it as well. And really sweet bunch of people from overseas. They did a short where they reenacted a story out of one of Kevin's books about a time period when Kevin was sort of sticking close to Jay during one of Jay's times when he was having a very difficult time with his drug addictions. And they made a short, and it was called, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of it, The 12 Steps of Jason Mewes. And it's a really sweet reenactment of a story that Kevin published in his blog, and I think eventually in his book, about a handful of days that he spent by Jason's side, where Jason was having a hard time, you know, staying away from heroin. And they go off on a journey where they go looking for this collectible figurine doll. And that's the whole basis of this short film. And they did such a bang-up job with it. And Kevin finally, it got through to Kevin, and Kevin was floored by it. So he embraced these guys. And they thought, you know what? I mean, they're really, really huge fans from overseas.